Emotional attachment is the end goal of storytelling. When it comes to characters, you want to create sustainable characters if you want to create emotional attachment with them. How do you create sustainable antagonists? Here are 6 surefire ways to create antagonists. Each of these ways is defined by one keyword. The first way is the way of the rival. The rival is defined by the keyword evolution. Rivals are here for the game. Rivals are here for the competition. Rivals are here to help your character evolve and grow. So if your character evolve enough, they can be remediated. The second way is the victim. Your characters will meet victims. They will meet characters who've been into incidents, into crisis. And during this crisis, they'll happen to be able to save these victims. This will create a link of sympathy between your characters and the victim. The third way is the friend. Friendship is a kind of relationship which is by nature sustainable. And as the story evolves, the friendship will evolve, maybe to a point where 2 friends will become enemies. The fourth way is the fool. Now, the fool is an antagonist which is defined by failure, by multiple attempts, by multiple tries, experience, and sustainable failure. The fool will fail, which will make her a dramatic character up to a point which she'll reach and where she'll want to become something more. Now, how will she become something more? She'll get an opportunity from another antagonist, and this other antagonist will transform her. The fifth profile is the sponsor. Now, a relationship between your characters, your team, so your protagonist and your supporter, and the sponsor is a relationship of dependency. The sponsor is giving to your team resources, or at least she's exchanging with your team resources at a rate which is highly advantageous for your team. However, know that this dependency is not completely asymmetrical, and to some extent, the sponsor is also dependent on your main character. The last way of creating an antagonist is the official way. Now, an official is part of an administration, not necessarily a state or not necessarily a country, but the official is part of a large administration, of a large company, of a large organization. So she will exert some form of authority, and this authority, her position, her state, and her organization will allow her to oppose your protagonist. The common trait of these 6 ways is linked to the fact that you want to create a sustainable relationship between your characters. Now, sustainability here is essential because your goal as a storyteller is to create emotional attachment. Now, emotional attachment, and especially antagonistic emotional attachment, start with animosity. Your character, your protagonist, will oppose someone. Because remember, your protagonist is the antagonist of your antagonist because they're fighting each other. They're opposing each other. They're trying to harm each other to some degree in order to stop one another. This relationship, this emotional attachment, may start or may develop into a support type of relationship. So there may be some animosity at the start, or the characters may support each other at the start. That's 2 ways to create an antagonist which will be attached to your character. And remember, if you can attach 2 characters, if you can create attachment between 2 characters, you can create attachment between your characters and your public. Third way is, well, simply attachment. But now, the word attachment in this situation takes a more specific sense. That you may want to create some antagonists which will be here for your character, for your protagonist, whatever happens. that may be the rival type, it may be the friend type, it may be the pupil type, it may be the mentor type. Some characters will become more familiar or may become directly part of the family of your character, part of a tight group, part of a very limited group. So attachment here in this situation means literally part of a family or part of a very tightly knit group. Finally, you want to take care of this relationship. You want to camp this relationship. You want to upkeep it and keep it afloat. You want this relationship to remain visible through the whole story. And you want to develop implications every time one of the two characters is put in a situation which is detrimental for them. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that one character will help the other. No, because we have antagonists here. So an antagonist may benefit from a detrimental situation for your main character, and she may use this detrimental situation to harm your character even more. So some profiles that we've presented in the beginning of this video are meant to do so. The betrayer type of profile, the profiteer type of antagonists will use a difficult situation to harm your character even more. Another thing to consider is that if you have multiple antagonists in the same story, so you have your main character, you have your protagonist, and you have multiple antagonists around her. Let's suppose you have your protagonist and she has 6 different antagonists. These antagonists are likely to be antagonistic toward one another, because some of them will be friends with the protagonist, some of them will be some sort of supporter, like typically the rival, the friend, and the sponsor will be more tightly knit to your protagonist and will have an interest into helping her to progress, contrary to the other 3. So there's a high possibility, for example, that your sponsor or your rival is opposed to the official type of antagonist. So you have to think about the initial relationships between all your antagonists in order to prevent their antagonistic behavior toward one another. Now, the 4th main type of initial relationship when it comes to antagonists may be envy. One character may want to be like another character, and here you can replace the word character by antagonist, but it applies in a broader way. One character may want to be like one character, or one character may want to replace another character, either in position or in the function of the character in the story. There's the innocent type of initial relationship. So one character may obey one other character or may follow one other character because she doesn't know a better way, because she doesn't know how to do things differently, because she has never been exposed to different way of thinking. She is unable to have a broader or a different perspective on the situation. There's the amity type of initial relationship, and again here the important word is initial relationship. All of these 4 are meant to evolve, and they can turn into the other, but the initial relationship, the first impression will always be the same because it's the initial relationship. There's the amity type. So a character may want to help another character, so as equal often, but there may be some form of a hierarchy between them. It's not important because here the key word is wants to help. You know, there's no form of subversion, there's no form of duress between these 2 characters. Even if one of them is the subordinate, she wants to be with this character. And she may act as an ambassador because she promotes the message of the first character she's helping. And finally, the last type is the initial hatred. So 2 characters, and you'll see that in murder mysteries, you'll see that in horror, you'll see that in drama. 2 characters may initially develop a hatred for one another, or it can be asymmetrical, and it's just one character which hates another character because this other character did her harm in the past. And it may manifest by revenge, but revenge is not the only way to manifest hatred, it's just the most common way. So if you want to manifest hatred easily, just go for revenge. It can be an individual type of hatred, so I hate one person because this person killed a member of my family, harmed me, tortured me personally in some way, and so on. Or hatred against a group. And here, it's not really two different strata, it's much more. One individual did something, and then I extrapolate, because I'm quite rigid, I extrapolate that to the whole group. So one person did that to someone close to me, so it must mean that other person in that group may be able to do the same thing. And that's the 4 initial type of antagonistic relationships. Once you've established the initial attachment, the initial relationship, and you've decided why this relationship will be sustainable, you choose one of the 6 ways. Now, the first way is the rival. The rival may be the easiest way to start, because rival most often are enjoyable antagonists. They're rarely treated as nasty antagonists. Rivals have a form of honor. Rivals are playing a game, and rivals also, much like friends, sponsors, mentors, pupils, help your protagonist to evolve and to become better. So if you don't want to create 2 nasty antagonists, start with rival. They may be more adapted for you. Now, why would a rival turn against the main character? By turning here, we mean killing the main character. A rival will eliminate the main character because the main character has become too weak in their system of value, in their perspective. Rivals are red, rivals are fire, rivals are dragged to your character because they want a competition. They want to fight. They are driven by change. They are driven by evolution. So if your protagonist has stopped to evolve, it's time now to get rid of her. Of course, it will not be the first thing that the rival will do. There will be multiple attempts to put back your character on the same level, but too many attempts will lead to a form of sadness, form of resent, form of angst, which will make the rival take the decision to eliminate your character, because you're now a lost cause. The second way is the victim. Now, how is the victim introduced to the characters and to the public? The victim should have some degree of attractiveness. Not necessarily physical attractiveness, but the victim will need to have a degree of sympathy. You need to create a sympathy, a relationship, a tight relationship between the victim, your protagonist, the protagonist's group, and the public. If you want to take that in a broader sense, you can consider that the public is part of the protagonist's group, since the public is following the story through the perspective of the protagonist. So you want to create this closeness, you want to create this tight relationship, and there's a proportionality which appears here. The closest the characters and the public feel from the victim, the more brutal or the more violent the betrayal will be felt. So the victim is a piece of work, is a very central piece of work when it comes to creating emotional attachment. And you may want to reserve victims to genres like drama or horror, because they will create a sense of really, it's painful when the victim ends up turning against your main character, and because to some degree the victim will turn also against the public, and the public will resent that. They will feel it will be painful. So maybe reserve victim to drama and horror. To some degree you can use victim in comedy, because the framework of comedy can help you to use the victim in a very different manner. You can make the situation quite absurd or quite ridiculous, satiric maybe to some degree. The key word here really is developing sympathy, because thanks to sympathy you create closeness, and thanks to closeness you make the betrayal more painful. The third way to create a sustainable antagonist is to turn a friend into an enemy. Now, what could cause friendship to turn into enemyship, and to which degree? If your main character, if your protagonist, acts in a way which is detrimental not only to herself, but to her group and maybe to the world as a whole, her friends will anger against her. And this rage that your main character, that your protagonist has created, will now turn her friends against her. Not because of resent, not because of any form of hatred or bitterness, but because your character has failed, and now her friend should resolve to stop her. And it is the essence of a friend, to protect another friend. So maybe for some time they will be enemy, but in the end, the friend type of antagonist must realize that she's acting to save her former friend. And only her can remediate this situation, this character. The harm that has been done by your protagonist is now the responsibility of your friend. These two characters are tightly knit. They're close. They're some of the closest kind of antagonistic relationships you can create. And that's why everything that's the responsibility of the friend originates from the responsibility of your protagonist. The 4 surefire way to create a sustainable antagonist, a great antagonist, an antagonist that you'll get attached to, is to create a fool. Now, the fool is defined by failure. The fool will try. The fool will attempt multiple things. The fool will want to succeed. She will bear the hope to succeed. And the fool might not be an antagonistic character in the beginning of the story. She will turn into an antagonist progressively because the fool will become bitter. The fool is an intrinsically dramatic character. The fool may also be the most relatable kind of character for the public, because the fool, in the end, will become the character because she has accumulated all this hope. She has accumulated all these dreams, all these expectations, all these aspirations, which will develop the highest degree of resent. Resent for your protagonist, because your protagonist may have succeeded where the fool has failed. Resent for an organization which has impeached her to become better. Maybe it's the same organization that promoted your character for doing things that the fool wasn't able to do. Resent is a key word here when it comes to the accumulation of failure and the vision that failure is ashamed. The fool, by her nature, her desperate nature, the nature of an individual which has accumulated hope without maybe a clear goal or without the proper level of self-awareness, which will lead her to resent. The fool is an intrinsically dramatical character. Really, this character is meant to be put in a drama story or an horror story or an adventure story or a saga maybe. You can put fools in any kind of story. You know, it works very well for action, it works very well for comedy, much more so for drama and saga maybe, because you want your fool in the long run, through multiple exploration, through the development of multiple type of expectations maybe, to become more and more bitter. The fool is a character which by nature may become more sustainable than all the others because she has to fail many times before becoming a fully accomplished fool. The 5th way to create a surefire antagonist is to create a sponsor. Now, the sponsor's way distinguishes itself from all the other way by the fact that the sponsor will be attached to the protagonist, to maybe other antagonists, and to really anyone that she sponsors. But at the same time, and that may be seen as a paradox, but there's actually a great synergy between these two concepts. At the same time, she'll have to remain calm. There's very little animosity in a sponsor, because a sponsor wishes to build a sustainable brand, a sustainable company, a sustainable set of service or products. So the sponsor will need to be attached because she needs to help her client, her customer, and at the same time she needs to operate a certain degree of calm, so she cannot develop animosity. So attachment, but with very little animosity. It's also the nature of the sponsor to understand that duress is a part of the equation, because creating a commercial relationship between two characters is highly based on the success of the relationship. So if this relationship fails commercially, the relationship has no value for the sponsor, or the other way around. So the sponsor is an antagonist. The sponsor is always an antagonist for your character, but the sponsor is also the most sustainable antagonist, which wants your character to succeed. Contrary to the fool, the sponsor always wants your character to succeed. So these two, the fool and the sponsor, are the two most sustainable form of antagonistic relationship, because there's always duress, there's always a form of no competition really, but a form of ambivalence in this relationship, because you may realize quite quickly that the sponsor needs your main character to not be too rich, but at the same time it's not like a rival. There's no competition between the sponsor and her customer, but the sponsor, because she's a tradesperson, she doesn't want her customer to get too rich, too wealthy too soon in the business she's in, because if so, she's not a customer anymore, she becomes a competitor. So the sponsor is an articulation of the principle of duress, of sustainable success, and she knows also that there's a symmetry during this relationship. As the sponsor wants your main character to be successful, she's completely understanding that your character is dependent on her, but to some degree she is dependent on your character as well. And so the sponsor, by preserving this inherent symmetry, will also want to create a relative level of asymmetry, because she will always want that your character to be a little bit more dependent of her than she is from your character. So it's all about sustainability, it's all about legacy, it's all about thinking in the long run and resilience for the sponsor. Our last kind of surefire sustainable antagonist is the official. If you feel particularly close to any of these 6 kinds of antagonists, be sure to tell us in the comment section which one is most relatable for you, which one feels more likable for you, which one is more memorable for you, and why you think that this way of creating antagonistic character is more relatable for you than the other 5. The official is characterized by the fact that she's part of an organization. An official will always be part of an organization. She will often, not always, she will often be a manager type of character. So she will be a ranking officer, or she may be even the leader or the founder of the organization. Now, an official will capitalize on authority. An official will capitalize on authority. It is a core value of official type of antagonist. It is what defines the way of this antagonist. This character will need at some point to acknowledge your character. She will need, and it can be an official or officious way to do it, she'll have to produce a statement, and again this statement may be published or it may not be published, but it should be at least known from multiple other valuable members of the organization. She will have to produce a statement of acknowledgement of your protagonist in order to become an official antagonist. This character is part of an administration. So she'll have a double type profile. She can be an influence type of antagonist, or she can be a strength type of antagonist. If you don't know what that means, just let's refer to the video on the profiles, on the character profiles in the 30 days book course. We'll leave a link in the description if you want to more details on what's an influence type of character or what's a strength type of character. And this administrative aspect of the official type of antagonist will often allow her, it's not a necessity, but it allows her, she has the possibility, it's a tool for her to abuse other characters. Now, if you have authority, you can use it. But again, authority, it's a tool. So you don't want to misuse it. Now, when does an official abuse their authority? Well, generally during crisis chapters or at the end of the story. Official characters really make for great final antagonists. So if you want to create a nemesis, for example, you may want to create an official type of character which is opposed to the character early in the story, and progressively she creates her own organization because she quit a prior organization in which she was with your protagonist, for example, and by growing this organization she can trample over your protagonist. So that's a way to create an official character. If you like this video and want to know more on this topic, this other piece of content may interest you.